There's a very extraordinary investor, a guy called Bill Miller, who I wrote about mostly in the epilogue of Richer, Wiser, Happier, but who I've interviewed an enormous number of times over the last 25 years. And he was this utterly brilliant guy who beat the market for 15 years running. And so there was almost a sense that he was defying gravity, right? Like he could do this thing that was impossible. And he got to a point where he was managing something like $77 billion. And I interviewed him really at the peak of his success. And I'd written a long profile of him for Fortune and the like. And then I would keep checking in. I wrote a story about him for Time later on. And then during the financial crisis, he kind of blew up and he made this huge mistake, and more than 100 people lost their jobs because of the mistake that he had made. And his assets under management went down from 77 billion to about 800 million. And so when I was talking to him about what I'd been through and was asking him, how do you deal with it? Part of what made me admire him so much was that I saw this incredible kind of stoic attitude that he had. And it's actually the right term for it. I mean, he had studied the Stoics because he was a philosophy PhD student, and he came from a very, very modest background. And his father had been a taxi driver. And so he had been in the midst of this mayhem when everything was falling apart. He would be going back to study Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and Seneca. And he said, look, I don't have control over how people are going to talk about me, what they're going to say about me, what my reputation is. I don't really have control over the outcome, but I have control over my own attitude. I have control over my own intentions. I can be honest about the mistakes that I made. I can be gracious in accepting responsibility. I can have a sense of humor. I can have a sense of humility. And I just tremendously admired his ability to distinguish between what he could and couldn't control.